Happy Sunday. Can you imagine a human being like you and I tells the sun and moon to stand still and they listen? That is the story from Joshua 9:10. 5 lessons from Joshua 9, chapter 9 and 10. Number 1. So the Gibeonites had heard about how the Lord of the Israelites had saved them and how the God of the Israelites had helped them conquer their enemies and get the land, right, that he had promised them. And so they were trying to protect themselves. And so they go to the Israelites, to Joshua, and then they go with like sackcloth, torn sandals, molded bread, wineskin that was torn. And they lied to them and said, look, Joshua, we're from a very far country, but we've heard that, your God has been helping you to get all this land. And we just want to be your slaves. We don't want any problem. We're from a really far away country. But that was a lie because they were just 3 days walk away from them. So they were close. And so Joshua was like, are you sure you're not lying to us? And they said, no, like, look. If we lived close, we wouldn't be so tarted, right? But they were lying. And so the story here for me is, number 1, they obviously had a stirring in their heart that these guys were lying to them, but they didn't inquire from God. The Bible in chapter 9, I believe is verse 14. They didn't inquire from God to say, are these guys actually telling the truth? But what did they do? They made a treaty with them and said, you know what, we're not going to destroy you. We're going to fight with you. We're going to protect you, and you will be our slaves. So they made a treaty in the name of the Lord without inquiring from God. So I guess my question to you is, when we have stirrings in our heart, do we just ignore them, or do we turn aside to say, what is this stirring? Do we go and make inquiry from the Lord and say, oh Lord, what is happening here? Can you tell me what is happening here? What do I do? Right? So I think that we need to always pay attention to the stirrings we have in our hearts and inquire. And the second thing I'm going to pull out from this chapter 9 is the last verse. It says that the Gibeonites became slaves of the Israelites up until this day. So the question is, are there generational curses or generational things that our forefathers did that are still impacting us today? So I believe that if there are any generational curses, because when the Bible says that he will no longer visit the iniquities of the forefathers to the third and fourth generation. That used to be a curse before, but the Bible says that he will no longer do that. So if there's anything our forefathers has done that we might be suffering from, like, we need to pray against them, right? So generational curses, ancestral curses, anything like that. That's something I think that is important to pull out of here. Joshua 10. So Joshua tells the sun and the moon to stand still. Wow. And they obeyed. So in this chapter, we see how God broke protocol. God is a God of order. We see that the sun comes out by day, the moon at night. God is definitely a God of order. But in this case, protocol was broken, right? Because a man chose to stand in faith and speak. So are there times that in our lives we need protocols to be broken? It's possible. God is the God of possibility. So anything that we believe that can happen, or that we want to trust God to do, it can happen, even if it means breaking protocols. Because we see in Joshua 10 that protocol was broken, right? And so we know that things that we see in the Bible there are things that we can also aspire to do in our own lives. But don't tell the sun and the moon to stand still. Don't try to. Okay, so the second thing I pulled out of chapter 10, is, the Israelites had defeated the enemies. They had fought them. And chapter 20, I believe it was chapter 10, verse 20. It said that there was a small selection of people, of the enemies, that made it to the fortified cities. And so that got me thinking, these guys are the enemies of the Lord. So obviously they don't have protection from God, right? But who are the people that were able to make it to the fortified town to be safe? And so when I read the Bible, I like to bring it to our today. Those guys must have been people who, one, had knowledge of this fortified city. Two, they were people who were strong, who must have been going to the gym every day and were very strong and they could run. They had horses that were sharp that could run and outrun the Israelites. So in our today, are there things that we need to make sure that we sharpen our skills in terms of our knowledge, in terms of our strength, our agility? Like basically what this is teaching me is that we need to learn to be agile, right? We need to learn to be agile in situations so that we can run into safety. Knowledge is power. Information is king in this day and time. And then the last thing I wanted to share is, if you read the last few verses of chapter 10, you see that Joshua defeated all the cities, like the whole region, all the little cities in that region. He defeated every single one of them. But the way the Bible said it, it was like, okay, he defeated Makeda, and then he went on to defeat Libnah. But and he always referred to the previous city he defeated, right? The previous victory he had. So it was like one victory on the heel of the other. And there was always a reference to that. So the way we can bring it and apply it to our day and time is, if we're in a situation where we are in a season where we are dealing with things, can we refer to the victories of the past, the victories that God has given us in the past? Can we rely on those victories and just trust that the God that gave me this victory in this time past is able to also give me victory in this season I'm in today, right? And that's something I really pulled out from that, because it kept saying, he defeated this city just as he defeated the previous one, and then defeated the next one just as he defeated the previous one. So can we just trust God for whatever it is we are believing God for and praying for? Can we trust that He's able to do what we want him to do in this season, just as he did it in the previous season? And if you remember the story of David, when it was before Goliath, right? And he said, the God who saved me from the lion and the bear, it will help me take you down, you uncircumcised Philistine. So really just leaning back on, hold on, Tammy, really just leaning back on our previous victories and trusting God to help us in this season. That's it for me, friends. I hope you have a wonderful week ahead, and I'll see you again next Sunday. Cheers. Bye.